Hello everybody, Aza here, and I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas and a very happy New Year to all of you. So, for this year I actually wanted to start a new series on my channel. So, in this series basically I will be taking a character or a scene and then illustrating it. It can be any character from the franchise, and maybe later on in the series I might branch off into other franchises. Or maybe even do some commissions if I get someone's permission for it. But yeah, so if you do have any idea of what pitch you would like me to draw next for the series, please leave it in the comment section below. For the first image of this series, I always knew that I was going to start with Mario, as I would, since, you know, he's the main character. I had a lot of debate for what I should draw for this image, and I eventually went with just Mario relaxing in a field, and then it just evolved into Mario sitting underneath a blossom tree while sitting in a field. So you can see in the footage that I'm showing you right now that I'm actually trying to draw him laying down, and more surprisingly actually having him facing forward. In a lot of my images I normally use the 3/4 view of Mario, so using the front view of Mario was a bit of a challenge, as I've always had a bit of a problem with drawing characters facing forward. As you can see in the video right now, I'm actually struggling a bit with the eyes, trying to seeing if it making them bigger will help. Obviously it didn't work out that way, and I ended up redrawing the eyes again, and I kept the proportions the same, although I did go back a bit later on and increase the eye size a little bit, just to give Mario a little bit more of a cuter face, because the eyes before were just way too small for me, and I'm more happy with how it looks now. I also tried playing around with the head, as you can see, but I eventually just kept it the same. After Mario was done, I did some basic shading in mainly yellows. The reason I do this is just because it's a sunny scene. You should always think about what colours you use to shade with depending on what kind of mood you want to translate. Obviously, since I am trying to translate a happy and calm scene, I will use brighter colours. What you can see on the screen now is me just putting in some more defined shadows just to reflect the branches that are above him. After Mario is done, I move on to the background. I will admit I struggle a bit more with backgrounds than I do the characters, but I will say that I have improved a lot, thanks to both drawing backgrounds more and also because of the help I've been getting at uni. I didn't want to be too over complex with this background, as I wanted the blossom tree above to have more detail. So I just kept it simple, with just having a simple grass field filled with a couple of flowers. Where Mario was sitting, I did have a few problems with the gradients, as you can see on the screen, but I did eventually figure out the trick to the gradient I want and got what I wanted. Then obviously with the background I did some simple shading, again shading in yellows. And then I also went back and did some highlights in the grass just to give the grass a little bit more depth. Once the background was done, I moved on to the actual tree branches and the blossom. I always found trees very fun to draw. The first time I drew a tree was back in college for a Watership Down remake of the front cover. One of the attributes that my tutors praised a lot was how well I drew the branches on the tree. Because obviously when you think of Watership Down, you have that big tree on the hill. So a tree, funny enough, is one of my favourite things to draw in any drawing, which is why you might see a lot of them in my drawings. Even though I wanted the branches to encase Mario, I didn't want to put too much detail onto them. After the branches were completed, I went on to doing the blossom. I did debate on how doing the blossom, and I eventually went with using a purple line for the stem, and then putting the blossom above it. There are many different types of way you can draw blossom, but for me this is the most easiest way. Also, unlike some other depictions of blossoms in films such as Mulan or something, I don't really do too much detail when I draw blossom. Mainly because when I think of blossom, I think of that cute pink fluffy flower that grows on the trees. So I don't put too much detail into it, I just pretty much try and make it look like a ball of petals. So you can't really see the centre of a blossom. Again, this just depends on what blossoms there are. There's different types of blossoms, some have more defined petals, but I prefer the more fluffier ones. As you can see in the image, this is a very tedious task. But once I've done all the outlines for the blossoms, I go in and fill them in with pink, and then I go back over all of the little flowers and I just put in some highlights in the middle, just to help give the flowers a little bit more depth. You should always think about giving depth to things, because otherwise it just looks very flat and plain. Once I did this, I filled all the highlights in as well. And then I went in and filled in the branches and did some sort of shadings like I do on Mario and the other characters. But before I did that, I was actually trying to think about how I would finish off the blossom tree. At first I thought about giving the blossom tree a few more pink leaves just to give it a really full look, but eventually I decided that it looked way too cuddly, like it was completely encasing Mario, so I decided against it. As you can see here, this is when I remove it and move it away, and I decided to recomposition the image, making the branches a little bit bigger and also fixing a few shading issues. Once this was completed, I finished off the shading on the branches and did a bit of clean up around the flowers. I decided to go back and create a few more fluffy petals around the flowers just to make them a little bit bigger so they don't look too tiny in comparison to Mario. Mario's quite a small guy anyway. I know he's not that small, but he's still quite short, so I do want things to be probably slightly bigger than they should be. After that's done, I go in and shade the tree in with pink and yellow. The reason I did it was just to push the pink colour even more in the image. After the first set of branches were done, I moved on to the second lot of branches and did some more of the same that I did earlier, except on just a little bit of a larger scale, just so it looks like the camera is actually in the trees looking down at Mario. I repeated the same process as I did for the other blossoms and just made everything a tiny bit bigger. And I even still added in the bushy petals around them. I did think about not doing this, but I eventually decided that it would just look a bit odd if I didn't do this. So that's why I went back and added the fluffiness to the flowers. Once this was completed, like the previous set of branches, I went in and shaded with pink and yellow once again. Once this was done, I sorted out Mario and the background underneath, just to make sure they weren't hiding behind the branches too much. And then I went in and started adding other effects in, such as some falling petals falling towards Mario, as well as some other effects like the sunbeams coming through the trees. I like doing sun rays a lot in my images just because I think it just makes the images look a little bit more finished. And then to finish off the piece, I added in some big petals around the sides before adding in the border. And that's it, that's how I ended up creating this image. If you like what you saw, please hit a like, and if you have an idea of what I could draw for next time, please leave your suggestions down in the comment section. I cannot wait to read them. Thank you for watching, guys, and as always, I am Aza, and I will see you next time.